Hey, how's it going? I know a lot of people are just starting off getting into Worm Online since we released on the Steam servers. Um, while I think a lot of players are naturally gravitating towards the PvE servers, there's also PvP servers that are out there that I don't think are getting a lot of attention. Um, the PvP aspect of this game, a little boring. I mean, the combat system, not that fun, but that doesn't mean the PvP servers aren't fun. We're having a ton of fun over on Defiance, so if you are interested, I think this is a great video that I'm trying to put together that's going to go over a lot of questions that new players have, especially around PvP. So if you are interested in checking it out or getting involved in PvP, hopefully this answers some of your questions. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to ask them in the comments and I'll respond. I'm sure other players who have been playing for a while will also give their opinion. So I think a good place to start is really talking about the difference between the PvE and the PvP servers. Um, First, I would say that PvE, everybody is in one kingdom. Everybody's a member of the Freedom Isles. The actual server code's a little different, where gear and deeds and theft is really prohibited. Can't obviously kill other players. Obviously, the big appeal of the PvP server is that it's a little bit more lawless. Players can kill other players, including players within their own kingdom. But mainly the game is focused around kingdom-based fighting. So there's three kingdoms: Mulrahan, Genkalan, and Horde of the Summoned. When you come over to a PvP server, you will have to pick one of these three kingdoms to join. You can't really be independent. There are player-made kingdoms, but those are not in the game on Defiance yet. They were on Epic, which was a previous server cluster. There's three things that I think really kind of stand out about Wurm Online from a PvP side. First, it's high risk, high reward. We have a full loot system. So if you die, you lose everything. Not necessarily your skills, but your actual gear and everything you have in your inventory is going to drop. The enemy can then take that. Second, it's a kingdom-based game. So a lot of games sometimes are very independent. It's about how strong your character is or how strong your guild is. Really, Wurm Online is about how strong your kingdom is. So it's it's Mulrahan versus Genkalan versus Horde of the Summoned. It's this three-way kind of war that's going on, and it's a lot about territory, going into the enemy lands, attacking their smaller camps sometimes. It's very different than, I think, a normal standard PvP game. And the third thing is that there's just this kind of element of the unknown and risk that makes Wurm Online a lot of fun. You could just be sitting there crafting and all of a sudden you're suddenly under attack, you're under siege, or you're going out hunting. Somebody pops your local, it's a white name. You don't know if it's an enemy, if it's just somebody within your own kingdom that you don't know. Can that person kill you? That kind of risk is a lot of fun. And I don't think you kind of get that experience on a PvE server. I think you kind of know it's relatively safe over there. You're going to be fine. You put your deed down, you wake up in the morning, everything's going to be there. But the experience that you have on a PvP server is very different. You got to really pay attention to your local and what's going on in your kingdom chat. And really, it's all about how well you work together as a kingdom rather than independently, which for me, I find to be very different than other games. I think the first big question a lot of people have is, when am I PvP ready? When can I go in, start fighting, participating in kind of going out and killing other enemies? And I think that to answer that question is, if you want to go out and really participate in PvP, first you probably need to ride a horse. So you need 21 body control. You probably need a little bit of fighting skill. Probably anywhere between 20 to all the way up to like 70 fighting skill. But really, I don't think you have to sit there and grind all the way to 70 fight skill just to then participate in fights. A lot of people get involved in fights with very low fight skill, and they still do a fair amount of damage and participate without any issues. So get your body control, try to get some fight skill, stick to one weapon when you first start out, and grind that weapon skill up. If you're going to use a sword and shield, try to grind your shield skill up a little bit so you block more in combat. I'm not really going to advise anybody to pick a certain type of weapon. I think all weapons really have some type of value. I know a lot of people using pole arms, a lot of people using swords, a lot of people using axes. There's a lot of plus and cons. In the description below this video, I'll link you a sort of rock, paper, scissors algorithm of which weapons do good against which armor types. So again, it's all situational. And the very last thing I would advise you to have is really a group of people that you're involved with. You have to get involved with your kingdom. Joining a village or joining an alliance, having people to kind of go out and PvP with. It's very hard to PvP independently in this game. It's really more of a kingdom game or a small group game. I think if you go out by yourself, you can still have the opportunity to kill people, but you're more likely to bump into a larger group of enemies. So a lot of new players end up then asking us, is your fight skill really the most important number to have? Is that really what it all revolves around? And what it's actually, the most important value is actually your combat rating, your CR. So your combat rating is actually not a visible number, so it's not in your skills tab, but every creature and player in the game has a certain CR. And your CR is basically a value that's tied into an algorithm that determines your chance of hitting and how good you're really going to be in PvP against another enemy. So it's really your CR versus the enemy or the opponent's CR. There's a lot of things that add to your CR. Obviously, your fighting skill is the easiest way to get permanent CR, but actually when you're in combat itself, there's temporary ways to get boost to your CR. Being mounted on a horse, focusing up in combat, drinking a potion, and when you're on the PvP servers, we have certain kingdom titles like rulers and assassins that can be appointed that actually give out combat rating. And you will notice those things do make a significant difference. A 70 fight skill person versus a 70 fight skill person on a horse is pretty noticeable difference. And really it's not all just fighting skill and CR. There's other variables that come into play. The quality of your armor, what type of weapon you're using, if you're using aggressive, normal, or defensive fighting stance, your footing, if you're mounted on something and what it is you're mounting on. You get combat rating for being on a horse, but you actually get negative combat rating for being on a boat or a wagon or a cart. So it's all very different. There's a lot of things that get factored in when you go into a fight. That's not just really the CR number that's going to really determine if you win or lose. There's 3 different fighting stances in the game. There's aggressive, normal, and defensive. And they actually do make a pretty big difference when it comes to fighting with your damage output and how much you're going to block. So I'll play a small I'll show a video while I talk here of me going after some just normal horses, fighting them in all 3 different stances, just to show you the kind of damage I'm doing, how long it's taking me to kill these. But overall, easy rule of thumb, if you're using a 2-handed weapon, you probably should always be an aggressive. There's really no reason not to be. You're only really going to want to use defensive or normal fighting if you have a shield and a 1-handed weapon. I would probably recommend using normal fighting if you're in a 1v1 situation, if you're not very confident if you're going to win or not. Otherwise, if you switch over to aggressive, you're going to put out a lot of damage, but you're not going to block as much. Normal fighting is a good middle ground. I would only use defensive if you're being targeted by multiple players and you feel like you're dying too quickly. Once you switch over to defensive, your damage output goes down dramatically, but you increase your rate to block. So you're going to take a little bit less damage and you're going to survive a little bit longer. But I would say probably 80% of the time I'm playing, I'm using aggressive because I want to go in, kill the enemy as quickly as possible, do as much damage as I can. If suddenly for some reason I get dehorsed and I feel like I'm on the ground and I want to be a little bit conservative, I'll switch over to normal. If I'm being targeted, I switch over to defensive and I let people know, hey, I'm being targeted, I'm going into defensive. It lets other people know in your team that they could be switching over to aggressive mode. I would also note that in a normal fight, I probably end up changing my stance once or twice. And again, it's situational. It depends on where you are, if you're on a horse, if you're being targeted, if you're ganking someone, if you feel like the fight's going your way, or if you feel like you're losing. So I would say start an aggressive. If you're using a two-handed. If not, consider using normal fighting. Really want to kind of use defensive fighting though pretty sparingly, only if you really feel like you're being targeted. And just to note that when you switch over to defensive mode, when it comes to archery, it doesn't actually affect your block chance when it comes to blocking arrows. That's dependent completely upon your sub shield skill. So your large metal shield or your medium metal shield. There's so many little things in PvP to learn and to know that it's hard to cover all of that in one video. I think to really learn PvP effectively, there's a little bit of a learning curve. You really have to get involved in PvP and kind of learn as you go. I could rattle off some basic rule of thumbs, but there's just so many. First, don't ever dual wield. Dual wielding is terrible. Your offhand does not hit as fast as your main hand ever. It's terrible. Second, attack the horse. If the person's on a horse, kill the horse. Or at least get it to wounded, bleeding, or dying so it can't move. You really need to target the horse first. 3, always watch your local. This is not a PvE server. If you're on here, and even if you're doing something very simple, you're outside woodcutting or you're mining, you have to keep your eyes on local. That's the fastest way people die. I go out once in a while, I go out hunting, I'll find a guy in my local, I can walk right up to him and slap him before he even notices because he's just not paying attention. I'll leave it on this note. I think regardless of what kingdom you choose, what server you choose, you should give it a shot. I think about worst case scenario, what could happen. You come over, you use the portal. Every skill that you're about to grind on that PvP server carries over with you when you portal back. So you're not losing anything. It's a different side of the game. Everything those PvE servers has, the PvP servers also have. So you're not losing out on anything. It's maybe a different atmosphere, a different way of playing the game, a little bit more risk involved. You have to be a little bit more aware of your surroundings, where you are on the map, watching your local. But it's fun. I'm not going to say that visually and it's amazing and the combat system is perfect. It's not. But it's fun. High risk, high reward, a big kingdom game. A lot of fun to be had, especially when there's a lot of players involved. You can go out, get on a horse, go out to your enemy lands, kill people. It's very different. I think, again, whatever kingdom you want to choose, there's helpful players in every kingdom. There's villages recruiting in every kingdom. There's veteran players in every kingdom. I think you're going to get a very similar experience regardless of which kingdom you join. So give it a shot. And if you have additional questions, throw them in the comments of the video. Myself or somebody else will answer them. Again, there's a lot of people who have been PvPing in this game for years who are just dying to have new people come into the game. They're totally happy to answer questions, and they're happy to help you get into the PvP world. So if you feel like I'm just too new, I don't get it, ask away, come over, say something in Kingdom chat, say, hey, I'm new. I'm just looking for a village. I want to get started in PvP, and you'll probably get picked up in no time, and you'll probably be in the fight in no time. So, hope you have fun.